I'm ready. La.
All right, three, two, one. Welcome to the Project Violet podcast, where we're focused on helping ambitious professionals grow their careers. My name is Daniel Lay.
And I'm Carrie Maselli.
All right, Carrie, this is episode two. So, in the spirit of improving every episode, I think our intro is okay. I think it's directionally correct, but could improve. So this
Okay.
morning, I actually went into ChatGPT and asked it to kind of punch up our intro.
Nice.
Um, so it gave us a few options. I liked three of them, so I'm going to read them to you, and I want your feedback. But also, I think we could throw it out to our audience and see what they think.
Like a
Maybe we'll
little like a
throw.
little vote, maybe?
Yeah, we'll throw it in the comments, see what people think. Okay, so let me read them real quick. Option one, which is supposedly refined and clear. Let me get in my podcast voice here. All right. Welcome to the Project Violet podcast, where ambitious professionals come to grow, lead, and thrive in their careers.
Okay.
Option one.
Mm-hmm.
Option two, this is supposed to be confident and modern. You're listening to the Project Violet podcast, your go to space for practical insights and bold career growth.
Okay.
Did I sound confident and
Are we
modern?
bold? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Option three. This is purpose driven. That's up my alley. Welcome to the Project Violet podcast, empowering driven professionals to grow their impact, accelerate their careers, and lead with confidence.
Okay. I'm into that one.
Yeah. Grow their
I
impact. Yeah. Yeah. We
yeah.
can we can
I'm
workshop that a bit.
into the when you said purpose.
Purpose driven. Option
Yeah.
three.
My kids reminded me the other day, Daniel, you know, my kids are 14 and almost 12. And they reminded me the other day that I used to always tell them to walk with purpose when they were like little and just like dawdling or
Oh
strolling
yeah.
around.
Yeah.
And I had places to go and I'd be like, walk with purpose. So I'm into purpose. I like having a purpose.
No, for sure. I'm super purpose driven. Actually, on that note, on like walking, I think I was watching something on YouTube where they just recorded a bunch of people walking in New York, and they asked a bunch of pickpocket people or people that steal from other people in New York, I guess, and just said who would be your target in people walking through, and everyone who was walking with purpose and standing up straight and looked like they were going somewhere, none of them were chosen as targets. It was all the people that were kind of like meandering around or didn't walk or kind of like
See?
slunched over.
That's right.
Those were the targets. So, yeah, for sure. Walk with purpose.
That tracks for me. I'm into it. I don't want to be pickpocketed.
Heck no. Yeah, me
Yeah.
neither.
well,
All right. Let's get
I'll
back
be
into it.
interested to see what people pick. We'll see.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll figure out a way to get your feedback. Maybe put it in the comments. Maybe we'll do a poll or something. But would love the feedback from our dozens of listeners.
That's right. That's right.
Really appreciate you guys listening in. Okay. In this episode, we're going to talk briefly about LinkedIn's 50 best employers for career growth. They published it this week. And we're going to pull another question from our advisor network in our community about game changing habits. All right, so we're pulling a bit of news into this. So LinkedIn just released its 2025 top company list, ranking the 50 best large US employers for career growth. It's based almost entirely on LinkedIn data and looks at factors like internal promotions, skill development, and career progression. To be eligible, companies needed at least 5,000 global employees with 500 in the US and couldn't have laid off 10% or more of their workforce in 2024. Topping the list are Alphabet, Amazon, Wells Fargo, Northrop Grumman, which I believe is a defense and aerospace company, and
Hmm.
PwC. So all recognized for serious investment in employee development. So Carrie, did you read the article? What are your thoughts? What are your
I did
initial
read
thoughts
it.
on this?
Yes. Well, I read the beginning and end thoroughly, and then I skimmed the list. That's very much tracks for me. I skimmed the list because I knew you would have scrutinized the list a little more. I yes, and I'll tell you, you know what strikes me about this? And thank you for sharing with the group too, in case they don't want to read it, like why, like how these companies were eligible and why they were chosen. I find it really interesting. So the article starts off, I'm going to read us something because I think this is interesting. For job seekers specifically, it's no longer just about finding a job. It's increasingly important to find a workplace that fuels continuous learning and long-term growth,
Hmm.
which I could not agree more with. Right, we know this. That's why we're here to help people figure out what their move is and where they're going and how to get there. Though when you think about that, which noble, right?
Hmm.
And then you look at the criteria that they used to determine these companies, there's no mention of like any kind of development opportunities that these companies offer. There's no mention of, you know, career coaching or upskilling in a way that helps them make these pivots. You know, like it said, like people are also like, what did it say too around they're to stay ahead, over half of professionals globally say they're open to pivoting into a new role or industry, which again, we support, right? Like
Mhm.
go for it, like do your thing. But how are these companies helping these people do this? Like, I don't know if this is what you were expecting me to say this morning, but I'm skeptical of this. I think, you know, it's a
Yeah.
bunch of big companies who lay people off and then they hire them again. Um, I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you think?
Yeah, did you check out the comment section? It was actually echoing a lot of what you were saying. I was reading through the people's
I did
comments, and there was
not.
a
Okay,
lot
I got to go
of,
back and those are
yeah,
my
a lot
people
of
then.
skepticism on the list. And I think it's justified too, because when you're reading through the list, they don't really give you, they say it's all based on LinkedIn data, but they don't really give you specifics of the data that show,
Not at
why
all.
some rose to
They
the
tell
top
you
or
like, oh, the job, because I think didn't you get the gist that or like the thought that it's like a lot of the jobs that they have posted on LinkedIn, right? Is like what's
yeah,
driving a lot of this. Which I mean, who knows what's driving that?
yeah. And
Um,
I mean, I think the first five, they did give some justification and gave a little more context of why they were, top five. But as you went down the list, it would it was very vague or didn't mention anything at all and just said these are the postings if you want to see their
right,
jobs. So
right.
yeah, it didn't seem very thorough to me. And if you look in the comments, everyone's, you know, kind of going against what their ranking was for a
Yeah.
while. The top
You
five
know,
actually.
you know what I first thought when you sent it too? It was like, oh, did people pay to be on this list? Because you know how you can be like you
Yes.
pay to be on like the best workplaces and stuff. Like I
Uh-huh.
don't think I'm sharing any kind of secret. People know this, right?
Nope.
You pay for
Everyone,
those
yeah.
lists.
Hmm.
And like I don't know. That was my first thought. It's like, did these was there some sort of, but I think they would have to disclose that, right? LinkedIn would have to say like these companies paid. Did like the best places to work, did they
That would
disclose
be
that
that
people pay for it?
That'd be an interesting to ask ChatGPT later. It's just like, is there
Yeah,
any information on the correlation between the companies that are on the list and who pays for like LinkedIn Learning? Like, are they,
that's right.
subscribers to that? And you're completely correct. I know that a lot of lists out there right now are pay to play,
Hmm.
and it's disappointing when you find that out.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, you have to be a subscriber, or to get on the list, they'll say, "Oh, you made the list," but to be published as someone that made the
Hmm.
list, you need to pay, 5 grand
That's
or
right.
something like that. It's very disappointing when you find that out.
Well, and you know, it's not any shade to like any of these companies that made it on the list either. Like, I don't really
No.
care. You know, they can do their thing and people can go work there. And if you find happiness there, I'm thrilled for anybody who's doing something that challenges them and, you know, is rewarding. But um, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm not even a skeptical person or like cynical. You know this about me. Like, I am an optimist and I like to embrace all sorts of, you know, pieces of information, but this just felt like I wanted more from this article and this list.
Yeah, and I was really grasping to try to find something that we could take away. And what I want to do, since I'm kind of heading up consultant development, was just look at the consulting firms and see
Yeah, let's do it.
what where they ranked and who was missing from the list and what were their reasonings for it. So PwC was number 5, E&Y was number 9, and Accenture was 19. I think
Mhm.
Infosys was
And
20.
as a reminder to the listeners, it's 50 companies, right, that they ranked.
It was 50 companies, yeah.
Yeah.
So when I looked at least their synopsis for PwC and EY, everything in there was very AI driven, and they
Mhm.
talked about how much investment they made into, upskilling their people into AI capabilities. So I just looked up, the big four and how much money they've invested in the past few years into just upskilling their people in AI. And I've got some stats here. So PwC in 2023 announced $1 billion investment over 3 years to enhance and scale their AI capabilities. E&Y 2023 invested 1.4 billion. Deloitte, which was missing from this list because I think they laid off a lot of people, committed 2 billion to accelerate their AI solutions. KPMG 2 billion, Accenture
Jeez.
3 billion. So
Wow.
all these consulting firms are pumping in billions of dollars to upskill their people on AI. And that just made me think on our community, especially on the consultant development side. Our next learning cycle should be on AI tools and workflows.
I
So
agree.
if you're a consulting firm and you're not investing in training your people on AI, well, the biggest consulting firms out there, they're pumping in billions of dollars. So that needs to be
Yeah.
part of your training and development for sure.
That's interesting. And what do you think that they're, and maybe this is for another day, honestly, but what do you think that means when they're upskilling their people in AI? When you hear that phrase, what do you think they're actually learning about? Is it how are they developing a product? Are they trying to figure out how to help their clients through this transition, or are they themselves using AI, like trying to upskill that, right?
It's
The
probably
idea of
all of the
optimizing.
above. All
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
above. I think E&Y, they actually built their own AI platform that's supposed to help their consultants. So it's like very consultants focused
Huh.
on their
Yeah,
industry specific practices. I think it's EY.ai.
that's
So they built their
interesting.
own platform.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think it's a little bit of all of the above. Deloitte has a AI academy that they spun up, so I'm sure it
Is
touches
that
on
part of Deloitte University?
probably, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
hey,
the
listen, good for them. I
yeah.
mean,
So I think
but if you
it's
don't have
definitely
a
a
billion
priority.
dollars, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but you got to focus on it. So if you're a consulting firm and you are not investing or upskilling your people in AI and what the tools and capabilities are, then yeah, you gotta jump in.
Well, and for the people listening who are consultants and maybe don't have a say in what these organizations are doing, talk to your leaders about what they're doing. Ask them, what are you doing to help me compete, in this marketplace with all of these other consultants who are being upskilled, and have
Yeah.
access to this stuff.
All right, Carrie, why don't we move on to the question from our advisor network? So let me read it and then you can go first and
All
then I'll go
right.
next. All right. The question is, what's a simple habit or practice that has had the biggest impact on your professional growth?
Okay, I didn't even have to think for a moment about this because, and I'm sure I'm not going to surprise you with my answer, but that habit is scheduling time for reflection on my calendar. I've been doing it for years now, and it's just like I would put any other meeting on the calendar. And I think it's really so I knew that was going to be my answer, right? Schedule time for reflection. But what does that mean, or what did it do for me? And I thought people might be interested in how it's helped me to shift how I work, even just slightly, into this place that's better, I think, and more productive. So I think before I started doing this regularly, I thought of productivity or being productive, right, is a good thing, right? We want to produce things or we want to figure out how to execute and get things done. But I thought it was really like just move from one thing to the next, check all the box. I did this thing, I keep it going. I often use that analogy of like, you're at the circus and you've got a bunch of plates spinning on the top of sticks, and you're just sort of like juggling it and you just run down the line and spin this one and then you run over here and you spin this one because it's about to fall. And it really just like you just are on that hamster wheel almost, right? Of like getting things done. And I wasn't giving myself the space or the time to actually think, truly think.
Hmm.
And now, even just 30 minutes a week, I do it on Friday mornings. Actually, it says hold for reflection on my calendar, and it helps me see the big picture. I think that's the key. Is that I think about how things are going. I think about my interactions or my conversations that week, how I'm showing up for other people, what's working, and actually, most importantly, what's not working.
Hmm.
And I think when I get more clarity about how I make decisions, I can be much more intentional about how I show up or what I'm doing, and I can stay aligned with what really matters to me and the people who work for me or with me.
Hmm.
I think I learned that productivity, and I'll finish here so I can hear your thoughts, but I learned that it isn't just about doing more. It's about thinking more clearly about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So hopefully that helps inspire some people.
I
And
love
actually, I
that.
have a couple more thoughts on that, but I want to stop talking and hear what
No,
you
yeah.
have to
No,
say.
no, yeah, I absolutely love that. The thing that it's a practice that I've started doing as well. And when I first started doing, especially now, I think our living this attention economy, everyone's just kind of running around doing one thing after the next and not really
Mhm.
thinking about it. And then, time flies and you don't really realize what you've done. You don't know how you've
Yeah,
improved and
great.
reflection is a great way to kind of slow time down and to reflect and to get just to take a pause from all those dopamine hits that you're getting from social media and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff and
Yeah,
just to kind of look inside yourself and reflect and just become it's the only way to kind of slow down and become a better person, I think. If you don't do reflection, it's just kind of going with the flow and letting life kind of hit you, and
yeah,
reflection is a great
right.
way to kind of counteract that.
I think it puts you in the driver's seat
Hmm.
and you have this agency to make choices rather than just react to things like you said. I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for people though. It's uncomfortable, isn't it, to
I
sit
think,
and think.
yeah, the hardest part in life sometimes is it just to sit down and stare at a wall and just let
Yeah.
your thoughts just come into your head and see
Yes.
and then think about why did that pop in? You know, what am I struggling with? You know, why are those thoughts consuming my
Yes.
mind right now? Yeah,
Yes. That's right.
yeah,
It's hard. And I don't know, it makes such a difference. At least for me, I'm such uh, an evangelist. Is that the right word? Even of like, when I want everyone I know to spend the time doing this. I was actually having a conversation with my husband about this the other day because he and I were out to dinner and we were talking about he has to do this thing. He's an engineer, as you know, and he leads a team of engineers. And he his work has asked him to do this. He got put into some special program, which is really great, for leaders to help continue to develop, and which, I love the idea of that. And he has to reflect, really, like reflect on these really hard questions about, when is he most engaged? When these are examples I'm pulling, whatever.
sure.
What does he see for himself, or what does he really like doing? And what does he want to do in the future? All these like almost like existential things too, right? That he's like, stop, like I don't want to do this. And he was telling me like I don't want to do it. And so we had this really interesting conversation about reflection and what that looks like. And I actually tied it back to our relationship because, as I shared with you, today's our wedding anniversary. And so,
Yeah.
he said to me, I was like, what's your wish? The restaurant brought us like a dessert with a candle in it, which I thought was really funny. And I said, what's your wish? We have to make it together. And he said, well, to be married another 16 years. And I said, well, that's really great. What does that look like for you? We're driving home and I asked him that. And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, think about it. What are we doing? Where are we? I think about those things all the time. And I think it is a result of that practice that I added to my day, right? In my week, I should say, not my day necessarily, my week years ago, that I am now, it's second nature to think about who am I in 16 years and where do I live and what am I doing and how do I get there? Right. Like, and my husband's not, and this isn't his fault. And I'm not trying to, you know, uh, I'm not trying to say that he's wrong, right, in any way, because he's very much like a lot of people where it's like, I'm just trying to get through the day, you know?
Yeah, it's not something that happens naturally. You have to work on it, practice it, and like tactically, do you journal, I guess, or write everything
I
down that you're
don't.
reflecting on? Okay.
I've tried a lot of times over the years. I am so much more of a verbal processor.
Hmm.
So if I really have something, I have some really close friends who I can call and really talk about some things with, or even my husband. He's a great listener and he'll listen to me. Like if something is revealed to me through reflection and I really need to process it, I'll talk,
Mm.
at my husband, poor guy. But and he has some really, but he has some nice things to add, different perspective too, which is helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. So reflection as your
Yeah.
game
Yeah, that's my
changing habit.
answer.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
What about
Great.
you? Let's hear it.
All right. So similar to the last week, I like to take a mantra or a phrase to kind of encapsulate what my thoughts are. So this week, I was thinking back on my sports days, and my coach used to say this all the time, and it really is the game-changing habit for me that I brought into the professional world, which is failure to prepare is to prepare for failure. I
Hmm.
am a big preparer, and I think part of it is how I was raised and also who I am and how I deal with. I'm a high anxiety type of person, as
Sure.
people may not know. So a lot of the ways for me to deal with that is I have to prep. You know, I think there's two different types of people in the world: people who talk to think, which I think you are,
That's right. Yeah, that's
and
right.
people who are like me who have to take the time to think and ruminate on their thoughts before they talk.
Hmm.
So a lot of the times I to get into meetings and for me to sound natural, even on this podcast, for me to come up and sound like I'm coming up with these ideas on the spot, I'm not. I've spent time thinking about it. I've
Right.
prepared, and it's made me sound more natural, or else I'd be fumbling over my words or I'd be just very quiet because I'm a big processor. So I think for me, the game-changing habit was to always prepare for everything. So
Hmm.
looking back earlier in my career, before the day even started, when I was going into the workplace, say my first meeting was at 8 a.m., I'd usually come in about 6 or 7 a.m. and just
Oh,
spend
wow.
an
Okay.
hour or two prepping for all my meetings for the day. And I think that was based on how I was raised too. So before I went, even when I was just growing up, before I went to school, my mom would wake me up early and I'd practice piano for an hour and then do 30 minutes of French verbs like before my day started. And then I would go to
Wow.
school. And
Yeah.
that's how, I was raised by a tiger mom. So I think part of the preparation before the day or just getting a ton of work done before anyone else is even waking up is just part of like my natural upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think just the act of doing that accelerated my career because I would be walking into meetings and I would have thought about all the agenda items or all the rebuttals or all the thoughts or the outcomes that we wanted to achieve in those meetings. I've probably thought about it 10 times more than anyone in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So I would
That's
come with
right.
deeper thoughts, more more preparation on what questions were going to be asked,
Yeah.
and that's just I think the practical advice. So I know I'm rambling, but like tactically, two things I would say is if this is something that you want to start practicing, I would say for every meeting that you set up or that you're facilitating, I'm so surprised about how many people don't do this, but like just have an agenda. Like
Oh
in the
yeah.
meeting invite, just put an
Yes.
agenda, like three bullets that you think are the main points you want to talk about, or what is the outcome that you want to achieve in that meeting. Just taking 2 minutes to think about that, it probably makes you more prepared than everyone in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing is, I learned this from a podcast that I listened to this week is, and the acronym is MOO, MOO, but think about the most obvious objection to whatever you're presenting. So if
Okay,
you're
I like
going
it.
to, yeah,
Moo.
yeah, MOO. So if you just take the time, 2 minutes, even if it's just, 2 to 5 minutes before the meeting, thinking about what you're presenting and what is the most obvious objection, just the 2 to 5 minutes that you spent thinking about that and what your response would be to the obvious objection will help you in the meeting because it may come up or you may even just address it even if no one objects to it to reinforce or to strengthen your point.
Mm-hmm.
And just those two little tactics, I think, will just 2 to 5 minutes of preparation in those areas will help you in your career tremendously.
I agree. And I feel like, what do you think about this thread that both of our answers have something to do with critical thinking, like helping us to think more critically?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's yeah, it's a way of reflection too,
Yeah,
getting
that's
ready
right.
for and preparing for meetings and all that good stuff. And yeah, I just think, professional players spend probably 90% of the week preparing and then
Mm-hmm.
actually spend maybe 10% or less actually playing the game.
That's right.
And as professionals, as consultants, it's probably flipped for us. We're executing constantly and we're not taking the time to reflect, to prepare,
Yeah.
to get ready for the game, which is, going to work and creating strategy or helping our clients execute.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think about young Daniel in that story that you're telling about, being the young consultant. And I think about all you've achieved and what I know to have built up this reputation and this skill set that is incredible. And I think that that's the that's a huge part of it, isn't it? Because I think about how, and you and I have talked about this before, but this idea that when you do that, when you set aside that time to prepare and actually employ moo, which again I love because it's easily
mhm.
remembered, but these meetings that you're in, some of them have people in them who are decision makers and leaders at higher levels than you would ever get access to, on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that you were prepared, I would imagine, helped you feel more confident in those moments, in those meetings, which then
Absolutely.
allowed you to be yourself. You were able to show up
Yes.
authentically as you because you weren't worried. If your anxiety hat, is you're wearing that when you run in because you're not prepared. You're certainly not confident because you haven't anticipated, what
Mhm.
might be, asked of you. And then you certainly can't be yourself because you're so worried about what everybody's thinking and
Oh yeah.
they're disappointed and they're this or who knows, right? You just start to spin about what it is. And so in this way, you're just like setting the stage for yourself to show up in this really authentic, confident way because of all that pre work you did.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's for anyone who suffers with anxiety or, just is one of those people that needs to think to talk. I honestly I think that's a great way to put it. To be your authentic and true self in those situations where anxiety can take over, preparation is a great way for you to not overcome that, but then come as your true authentic self in the meeting. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
great. Great advice.
And authenticity, I think, is it's a conversation for another day, right? And the
Hmm.
value of showing up as yourself and some of those pitfalls of when we start to mirror or act like other people around us, and
Hmm.
where that go, how we go wrong, in doing that too. It's another day, another topic.
Another day, another topic. That might be
Yeah.
episode 3.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that's all the time that we have for today. So, Carrie, great episode. And for
Yeah.
everyone who's still listening, who stayed with us all the way to the end, please let us know what you think the best intro is that we started and kicked off with. We
That's
will
right.
take your feedback and probably incorporate it in episode 3.
I love it. That'll be
All right.
fun. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you on the next one.